consultants that founded the Professional Independent Consultants of America. 16 syllables, way too many. We founded it because there was no single place to go to get help to launch and grow your own consulting practice or solopreneurship, right? Because we also have PICA members now who are executive coaches, financial planners, all different types of self-employed professionals. PICA, for those of you who are guests, is basically an educational organization and a community. We're all virtual based. We launched 3 or 4 years ago, I forget. We're small but mighty and full of very helpful and cooperative people. We run workshops, free webinars, interactive roundtables. I hold office hours every week, and our online library is packed full of tools, templates, and all kinds of helpful articles. So that's the little commercial for PICA. You will be on our mailing list by virtue of signing up for this workshop. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to PICA member and volunteer for this event, Sharon Creek, who is going to be our moderator. And thank you, Sharon, for setting this all up for us.
Yeah, great. My pleasure. And very excited for all of us to take part in this webinar, Referrals Without Asking. Yes, please. Just whoops, before we get started, just want to cover a few housekeeping items. So I believe this will be an interactive session. So, you guys are responsible for handling your own mute. Here, you can type questions in the chat window, raise your hand or your virtual hand. You can speak up as, if that's appropriate. I guess you can hover your cursor over the control panel if you need to kind of find the controls that I think all of us have used Zoom quite a bit by now, but you might have to hover to get the control panel to pop up. And the last thing is we will be recording this session. So at the end, after the recording, we'll send the slides and the link out to everybody. And with that, I would love to introduce you to our speaker and guest speaker today, our featured speaker, and that's Stacey Brown Randall. She's an award-winning author of Generating Business without Referrals Without Asking. And she hosts the podcast Roadmap to Grow Your Business. She teaches business owners how to generate referrals naturally without manipulating, incentivizing, or asking. She's been featured in several national publications like Entrepreneur Magazine, Investor Business Daily, and Forbes. And she's also received a master's in organization communication and married with 3 kids. So Stacey, I'm very excited to have you here today, as I'm sure the rest of the members are. And so with that, I will turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. We always like to say, my husband and I, it's 3 kids too many. So we're not saying which one we don't need, but there's just too many of them, all of them. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to dive in. Make sure you know where the chat is. There will be a couple of times I'm going to ask you guys to answer questions in the chat. But as Sharon said, I do want this to be interactive. So put your questions in the chat as well. I will do my best to reserve time at the end and you guys can unmute yourselves. And so we can actually have a conversation about the questions you have too. But I want to make sure that you leave today getting your questions answered, but I've got a lot of good stuff I want to cover. So I want to make sure that we get through it. So let me share my screen and we will dive in. Okay. So here's the most important thing that you really need to understand about me. It's what I would say, it's kind of like the most important thing you need to know about to be able to explain everything and really the why behind what I am going to share with you guys today. And that most important thing to know about my why is this. I am a card-carrying member of this club, the Business Failure Club. Now, in settings like this, I don't usually ask people to call themselves out like, me too, I'm a part of that club too, but I know I probably have some company. In fact, this is a huge club. It's a very large club. It's not one any of us want to be a member of, but when I talk about referrals and I talk about the way that I teach them, it's really important you understand kind of where I came from, because it's exactly the journey that put me here having this conversation with you guys today. So I started an actual HR consulting firm, so human resource consulting firm. Maybe some of you on this call are doing that right now, but I was an HR consultant and I started that business okay, I know I'm not interested in dating myself. So let's just say lots of years ago, right? Many years ago. And from the outside looking in at my HR consulting firm, you would have assumed it was doing really well. I was a subject matter expert when it came to generational diversity and also with employee engagement. And I had big name clients like KPMG, BDO, Ally Bank. So from the outside looking in, you would have assumed that I had a lot going for me in terms of how my business was growing and developing. The truth was, after 4 years, not quite making it to the 5-year mark, I would have to shut my business down and declare failure, become a member of this club, the Business Failure Club, and go get a JOB, which I'm sure most of you are here because that's the one thing you don't want. You want to build your own business, and that is most important. And so when you've tasted freedom and then you have to go back and get the JOB, let me tell you, it's kind of hard. So that business, while I learned a lot of lessons, really the most important lesson that I learned was figuring out how to stay off of the entrepreneurial roller coaster. This is the ride, and it's not the fun ride like this one maybe possibly looks like, but it's not the fun ride you want to be on. The entrepreneurial roller coaster is typically that feast or famine, highs and lows. I have clients, I don't have clients. I have clients, I don't have clients. And most of us step onto this ride from day one when we start our business, right? It's I got a couple of clients, I put my head down, I do the work, I look up, when the work is done, I'm like, oh snap, there's no more work to do. Now I got to go hustle and I got to go get some more clients, right? This is a normal, natural, almost roller coaster for all of us to be on when we're starting our business. It doesn't matter what business you start, right? This is a normal, natural roller coaster that you will probably ride your first and maybe even your second year as a business owner. The problem was for me, over 4 years later, I was still on it. And that feast or famine, highs or lows, having clients, I'm working with KPMG, one of the largest accounting firms. This is amazing, to, oh my gosh, I have nothing, and scramble and hustle, right, to get to that next opportunity. I spent a lot of time hustling, more time than I care to admit. Now, my husband would tell you that I probably hustled a lot sometimes so that I could skip bath and bedtime at our house with those 3 children when they were younger. They're now almost, well, teenagers and preteens now, but when they were babies, and he would be true. I mean, he would be right. It would be the truth. But the truth was, that's all I knew about how to grow my business, was to network, to be at all the places all the time, right? To show up at all the networking events, to go to all the chamber events, to make sure I was involved in all the organizations. I would be on committees, right? That's how I knew how to grow my business. Now, in truth, there's lots of ways to grow a business. And most important is you find the way that works for you, because you need to feel good about doing it and it needs to work. For me, what I knew was to pound the pavement and do all the networking. But when my business failed, and I looked back at that failure while I was sitting in my corporate America job, strategizing my exit to start my next business, which I would start about 18 months later, after I started that corporate job, which was a productivity and business coaching practice. When I would leave the corporate job and start my coaching practice, there was this necessity in me, sheer necessity of not being a member of the Business Failure Club again and figuring out how to grow my business differently and not only relying on networking as the main way that I was going to grow my business. So like most of you, right, you start paying attention to how are other people growing their business? What is everybody else doing in consultant land, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to hear a lot of things. And if you have a budget, some of those things will work for you. And if you don't, some of them won't. But for me, I kept hearing about referrals. I'm like, of course, like, yes, referrals. They're the best thing in the world. I'm sure I got some referrals with my very first business, that HR consulting firm, that when I was interviewed on Bloomberg News, of course, right? I got referrals. I looked back at my first business of all the clients I did land. And can you guess how many referrals I received? Big fat goose egg. Not one referral. Actually, that HR consulting firm, the first referral it received was 2 years later, after I had shut it down and was actually working in my productivity and business coaching practice. So for me, it became a moment of, I've got to figure out how to grow this business. And my preference is to do it in a way that's going to work for me. And for me, that way was ultimately going to be generating referrals. So I did what most people did. I went to the all-knowing Google and I was like, okay, Google, teach me, how do I get referrals, right? And the advice, the onslaught of very similar advice, all was received by me and felt pretty much the same way in the pit of my stomach, which was, yeah, that's not how I want to do it, right? So before I share what Google tells you and the main traditional, what I call old school ways of generating referrals, I would love for you guys to hop into the chat and tell me what's the worst way you've been told that you have to generate referrals. I always find this to be interesting. We get some of the similar answers, but hop into the chat and tell me, what is the worst way you've been told to generate referrals? Whether you've been told through a training session, Google told you, another business owner told you, a fellow consultant told you, hop into the chat and let me know. All right. We'll see what people have to say. Oh, Elizabeth, my she-shirt says, keep calm and sail on. Thank you for asking. Okay, ask halfway through the engagement. Rachel says, totally hurts the relationship. Ding, ding, ding. Rachel, you're right. We're going to talk about that from a science perspective in just a minute, right? Evan, interacting with peer independence, right? Ask for them. It's not that interesting, but it's actually the #1 thing that people are told, right? Ask for everyone you know to give you 3 names. What it is about the 3 names? It's like the common, just ask everyone you know to tell you 3 people. Cold calling. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure who you're cold calling to get referrals, but that's a terrible way to grow a business too, definitely. Referrals from former colleagues, right? Blast email out to your LinkedIn networks. Hey, who can you refer to me? Attend a lot of networking events to know a lot of people so people will think to refer to you, right? Go through your LinkedIn and like let them tell me who I need to meet. Oh gosh, you guys are so right. These are all the ways that we always hear about what it looks like to ultimately generate referrals. And it's all the same advice. So I call these the old school referral triggers. It's the advice that's been around for decades, and there are actually 4 of them, and you guys hit on a lot of them. But I think it's important that you understand what this looks like so that you know how what I'm going to teach you is going to be the opposite. So the #1 way that people are trying to avoid generating referrals is asking for them. Like I said, if you go to Google and you're like, hey, teach me how to get referrals, how should I do it? You're going to see things like this: 3 steps to asking for referrals today. Don't be afraid to ask for referrals. #1 rule of referral selling, always ask in person or on the phone. Get more referrals by asking. 7 ways to ask for referrals. And my personal favorite, friends, 25 ways to ask for a referral without looking desperate. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm just going to put it out there. If you need 25 ways not to look desperate, it's because we all know we look what? Desperate, right? There's a reason why most of us are like, oh, no, I don't want to have to ask because of all the ways it makes me feel, but it's also because I know of all the ways it makes the person feel that I'm asking. So this is a top thing, right, that people are definitely interested in avoiding. Compensation is another one, right? Giving that kickback, right? Paying that bonus, paying that under the table commission that usually the client does not know about. In some industries, the client's very aware that somebody received compensation when they became a client. I'm not really talking about the above board affiliate deals and things like that when everybody's aware there's payment being made. I'm talking about the things that happens within industries where no one's talking about the compensation being paid, but they're presented, right? And more of that scale of understanding that everybody's doing it. Like you can make money with referral programs or referral fees, best practices, and how to pay referral bonuses and offering incentives and offering a commission. The idea here is what this does to the client when they realize that they were referred to someone because, or you referred them to someone because you made a buck off of their problem or the pain that they have. I always tell folks when the compensation question comes up, just decide to put yourself in your client's shoes. If they knew that you paid for them to become clients when they were referred to you, how would they feel? Right. And so, but this is one of the top tactics that people are taught is to give that kickback under the table, pay that compensation, right? Pay that commission. And you're not really paying for a referral at that point. You're basically paying for a lead. So that's a big way, compensation, that what people are trying to avoid when it comes to generating referrals. Somebody else said this one too, the being overly promotional and gimmicky, right? Having to actually do things that you're like, that's not really the brand that I want, right? Now, in some industries, not in this consultant financial advisor type industry that some of you guys are, right? Then in some industries, I will see some really cheesy things like this, an extra pack of gum with a little note that says, I'll go the extra mile for your referrals, right? Being very, very cheesy, that gimmicky promotional. And so I see this in some industries, not in all, but there is one gimmicky promotional tactic that is still taught today, that people still use today, that I really wish people would stop using. And that is putting something like this in your email signature. Your referrals are our greatest compliment. I'm never too busy for your referrals. Don't keep me a secret. I will always open to your referrals. And putting that in your email signature line or in your newsletter. When this was new and novel about 15 plus years ago, it actually had a little bit of an impact. But now at the bottom of your email signature and in your email newsletter, nobody's noticing it anymore. And it isn't actually what triggers a true referral to happen. So it just comes across as the gimmicky and promotional. And the fourth way that people are trying to avoid, right? But the things that we've been told we need to do if we want referrals is to network and know a ton of people, right? There's a saying about got to be at the right place at the right time. Do you know what it really means to be at the right place at the right time? It means you're at all the places, all the times, so that the right time actually hit. That's ultimately what that means. That's what it felt like for me when I was landing companies like Ally Bank and KPMG as clients. I was like, I was at the right place at the right time. Thank goodness I went to all 16 networking events this week. This whole idea of networking to know a ton of people, like you always have to be seen, and being seen is what gets people to refer you. It is not. That is not actually what gets someone to refer you. So whether your networking looks like this or it's still looking like this today, right? But that idea that if people don't see you often, consistently, every week or every month, they will somehow forget to refer you, or they won't, or they'll stop referring you. And that's just not actually ultimately how it works. But this is the one that breaks my heart. So being taught the other 4 ways to generate referrals really makes me angry. Being told that you have to ask, compensate, that you have to be willing to be promotion gimmicky or network to know a ton of people. Being taught those tactics really kind of just makes me angry, right? It really irritates me that those are the tactics that are taught. But it's this one that breaks my heart for business owners. This whole idea that if you hope that you do good work, that you can then hope that you'll receive referrals. And hope is a dangerous strategy. It's a beautiful thing to have. It's not a very smart business strategy. And this is the one where people find themselves, well, if I'm not going to ask or compensate or network to know a ton of people, right? Or to be, or not want to be promotional and gimmicky, well, then I just got to hope I get referrals and hope that they come because I do great work. And that's not a strategy either. And this one breaks my heart because it means that you avoid or ignore the whole idea behind referrals and making referrals happen for you. So the big question is this, and it's why you're here today, right? Is there a different way? Well, the answer better be yes, or why are we actually hanging out today, right? Why are we all here together? So yes, there is a different way. And that way has to understand and has to come from a place where it does not compromise who you are and who your relationships are in helping you grow your business. That's what referrals are all about. They're all about relationships and the relationships you have with people. So the strategies you decide to deploy and the philosophy you decide to believe in, if you're going to really work on generating referrals, it has to be very, very clear that it's not compromising who you are or your relationships. What we call this as generating referrals naturally, without manipulation, without incentivizing, and of course, without even asking or any of those other terrible things we've talked about so far. But that doesn't mean there aren't things that we do, that there isn't a strategy that I teach for you to understand, which we're going to talk about today. But it is understanding the science behind how referrals happen to allow them to happen for your business naturally. But to us, naturally means we're not doing things that make us uncomfortable, but we are still consistently receiving the referrals that we deserve. There's actually a science behind how referrals are triggered. And it is within that science of how I've built my philosophy of generating those referrals naturally. So I used to be an adjunct professor. I promise I won't go all like adjunct professor speak on you and get really technical about the science here, but I do want to hit at a high level just a couple of things for you to think about of how the philosophy of generating referrals naturally is actually built. So the first thing is it's built based on the happiness trifecta. There's actually a part in your brain, where 3 chemicals are released every time you have a feel-good moment. And a lot of times those feel-good moments, right, it's called the happiness trifecta. A lot of times those chemicals are released when we have the opportunity to help someone. And that is exactly what's released every time somebody refers someone to you. They're actually not referring someone to you for you. Let me say that a different way. Referrals aren't about you. So when you receive a referral, the happiness trifecta that's being triggered in your referral source's brain is because they're helping someone else they know that has a problem or an issue, and they know that you can solve their problem. That's the first piece you have to understand about referrals. They're not triggered because you ask someone to refer you. Right? Why they're triggered is because, hey, someone has a problem. Oh my gosh, I know exactly who can solve it. Liz can solve your problem, right? Paul can solve your problem. And in that moment, there's a chemical reaction in my brain that makes me feel good, right? That because I'm helping someone else. And it's that we want to tap into to make the referrals continue to happen, not them thinking that, hey, when you refer me, you grow my business and that should make you feel good. That's not why people are referring you. But of course, they have to have trust in you for you to be the person they will refer to. And that's where your relationship comes in. There's actually a whole science of social networks, and every business, right, has different social networks. And if you actually identify your social networks within your business, your clients are one, your referral sources, which we'll talk about in more detail, is another. And there is a psychology of trust that has to be there in terms of understanding why someone chooses to refer you. But they're not referring you because they're trying to help you grow your business. They're referring you because you can be the solution provider for someone they know that has a problem. And now they get to be the hero by referring that person to you because they trust you to solve the problem. It's a really important distinction you need to understand, which definitely flies in the face of anything you've been taught before. Because offering to pay somebody for a referral or asking somebody a referral is making it about you. And that's when we get out of alignment with the science of why referrals happen. And that's why we get feeling uncomfortable. And that's why it's awkward and we feel desperate and we're making the other person feel that way too, because we get out of alignment and we're artificially trying to create something that does not exist. And then, of course, the third component of the science behind generating referrals naturally is understanding how behavioral economics work, but doing it from the place of good and not evil. This is where reciprocity lives. This is where surprise and delight lives, right? There are all these different things that exist in behavioral economics, right? Persuasion, all the things, right? But we look at it from the perspective as an understanding how people behave in a way when they feel good about the person they're helping because of how we manage that relationship. I'll be honest with you guys, there are many times when I am having a conversation with a client about the science, or I am talking to somebody else who's just first in my world and being like, what? There's a different way to get referrals. And I start talking about what this looks like. And I can boil it all down to this point, at this moment when I feel like sometimes I'm just trying to remind people to be a good human. At the end of the day, this is about taking care of the people who take care of your business. And that means you got to be a good human and take care of them. But there is a science behind it, and it does build off of these things. Now, the thing about science is that you got to understand that that may be the solution, but what does that look like so it's practical in application for you so that you will actually implement it? That is very, very important, is the implementation and the execution, because obviously that's where the results are. So what I'm going to walk you through is actually going to be very practical in application, and I really hope you'll do it as a homework assignment, but understanding that it's all backed with our solution that is science-backed as well. The other thing I want you to understand is this is totally possible. Generating referrals without asking, without manipulation, without incentivizing, without any of those ways, it's possible. And this is just like a teeny tiny screenshot of some of the wonderful clients that I've had the privilege of working with who I want you to know sat right where you sit today, hearing maybe for the first time, maybe you've read my book and now you're here, right? Maybe you listen to my podcast and you're here. More than likely, I'm brand new to you. And these are the same folks who sat right where you sat, brand new to this whole idea of generating referrals naturally, and then decided to try it and had great success with it. So we'll talk about what that looks like to double, triple, or quadruple your referrals in your first year. But I do want you to know, as you're hearing things for the first time and maybe hearing things different than ever before, and you're got this like mindset shift you're kind of going through, all these folks came before you. You're not the first one to sit here. And we have worked with hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the years. Now, not to overwhelm you, I will give you the link where you can download this for free when I'm done. You don't have to worry about pulling out your phone and taking a screenshot or anything. Not to overwhelm you, but this is actually the roadmap that I show my clients of what it looks like to build a referable business. There are 18 strategies on this page. Most businesses do not need them all. In fact, my business doesn't even have to operate with all of these strategies. I know them and I teach them and I've done them, but really to generate the referrals you want on an ongoing basis, you need the right strategies in place that have the right solution, right, with that science-backed solution baked into them. But where I tell everybody to start, is with our foundation. And what that ultimate foundation looks like, that's what I want to talk about with you today. And I want to go deep into one and teach one to you today, because I want you to start applying it when we're done. So the 3 foundational strategies, again, because I know I didn't show that for very long, are existing referral sources. These are people who refer you now, and you want more referrals from those who refer you now. Some of you may be like, oh, I don't have any of those, but I would love some potential referral sources. That's new people, clients and contacts referring you. And then, of course, we have the client experience. And the idea behind our client experiences is that, first of all, we're actually referable with how we create our client experience. But then we also know how to gather referrals throughout our client experience for those that are more likely to refer us. This is our 3 foundational referral strategies. The other 15 that layer on top of that are situational and next level, they really come into place once you have at least one of these in place. Now, lots of my clients will have multiple. Some of my clients only need one. They only need the existing referral source strategy in place because they have enough. They don't need any new referral sources, right? And their client experience is referable. So it really depends on where you're starting from. And I'm going to give you some markers to kind of figure that piece out for yourselves, but really understanding, okay, what does this look like in my business? These are the 3 big strategies. You need 1, maybe 2, maybe all 3 of them ultimately in place, but they're important for you to definitely understand. The one I want to spend some time with you today on, though, is the existing referral source strategy. That's getting the people who refer you now to actually refer you more. Because for every business, this is your low-hanging fruit. When I talk about taking a client, and I talk about taking that client and we double their referrals, or we triple their referrals, or we quadruple their referrals in 1 year, typically it's because we have a baseline from which to start. That doesn't mean we can't do it with people who need referral sources, right? But I have found the longer you've been in business, though not always, you probably have some people that are referring you. You probably also think you know who they are, but I'm going to walk you through a process to make sure you're very, very clear on this, because this strategy is based on understanding who those people are, understanding who those referral sources are. So this is the process of identifying your referral sources, your existing referral sources. So maybe you haven't taken any notes yet. This is the point I'm going to recommend you definitely take some notes, because these are the steps to identify your existing, to first identify your existing referral sources, but build out that strategy. Okay, so this is building out your existing referral source strategy. I'm going to break it down in a couple of steps for you. And it starts, number 1, by identifying who they are. Anecdotal evidence, or who you think they are, is actually not helpful in this process. We need to know exactly who has referred clients and prospects to you. So I'm going to walk you through my 3-step process to identify your existing referral sources, because of all those 18 strategies I showed you, none of them will actually work for you the way you want them to if we don't know who we're starting with. And that really matters at understanding, do you have referral sources or do you not? And then that determines where we go when we want to start implementing different strategies. In my group coaching program, we call this strategy stacking. And it's really important that we start with the first strategy because it's going to get us the fastest progress. And then everything we stack on top of it will just refine what we're doing and help us improve. But that first strategy is really important for our foundation. For most of you, it is this strategy. It is the existing referral source strategy. And it starts with identifying who are your people, who's your tribe, who are the people who refer you already. So here's the 3 steps to identify your existing referral sources. Number 1, I want you to list out all your clients. Now, if you're working with me, I'm going to ask you to go back 3 or 4 years. If that seems very overwhelming, I always tell folks when they're hearing this for the first time, then go back the last year or 2. So list out all the new clients you brought on board in 2022, and then list out all the new clients you brought on board in 2021. Just remember, a client that comes back to you to do work again it's a client on your list, but that's a repeat client. So you can list them again if you want. You just want to mark if they're a repeat client or not. So you're going to list out all your new clients for the last 2 years. I really would prefer 3 or 4. And if that sounds overwhelming, then just do it for 2022. Then you're going to determine the source. How did that client find you? Some of you are like, you have this tracking, whether it's in some kind of client relationship management tool, like a CRM, some type of online database, right? Some of you have this stuff already kind of readily available in some type of database, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, right? You're keeping this information somewhere. And some of you, you're not, and that's okay. What I will tell you, if you'll go through this 3-step process for me, and you'll actually list out your clients and then determine the source and then finish this process, you actually never have to do it again, not for my purposes. So doing it well the first time around is actually really, really important. So you're going to list out your clients and then you're going to determine where they learned about you. If you have that information, great, you're going to pull it. If not, here's some pro tips to think about where to find that information. Number 1, you can definitely look back through any email thread that maybe you had with that client before they became a client and understanding maybe where they came from. Maybe you have it in an actual hard copy folder where you took notes in your first meeting with them before they became a client and you've got it there. Maybe you have it in an old intake form that information just didn't make it into any kind of Excel spreadsheet or database. There could be lots of different places where you can find this information. Sometimes you may even find that in your calendar invite, it may have in the notes description how you met this client. Now, sources, there's lots of them. Maybe you met them at a networking event and you guys actually had a conversation and they were like, hey, we need to talk. I may need to work with you, right? Maybe they came through a Facebook ad. Maybe that you did a direct mail. Maybe it was your 7 million cups of coffee. Maybe you made a cold call and they happen to be the one person who answered, right? Whatever it is, the source of how they learned about you, right? They came through a Google ad, or of course, they were referred to you. And if that client was referred to you, it's really important you capture the referral source's name. So it could be like Liz was referred by Stacey and Sharon came through a Facebook ad, right? So that's kind of how it would look like in the column formats. If you're thinking about this like an Excel spreadsheet, I usually recommend people do this in Excel because it's just easier to sort than anything, or a Google Sheet, right? They're just easier to sort. So you're going to list out your clients and then you're going to determine where did that client come from, called their source. And then the next step is you're going to sort that list to show you only the clients that were referred by a referral source. That is going to give you almost, not complete, but an almost complete picture of who your referral sources are, because it's attaching them to clients you have in your business. Now, I always like to say this is like 75% done. When you list out your clients, you determine the source, and then you sort that list to say, okay, here's everybody that is a referral source that referred me one of those clients in the last year, 2, 3, 4 years, depending on however far you go back. I did work with a client one time. I think it was a financial advisor, if I'm remembering correctly, could have been an attorney. And they actually went back to 1998, like when I was still in college. I was like, nope, no. You went way back, way too far. We do not need to go back that far. 3 or 4 years is great. 1 or 2 if this sounds overwhelming. But this is about 75% of your list of referral sources. And that's because you got to do one more step. And the truth is, I need you to repeat this process, but I need you to repeat it with your prospects. Not everybody that has a conversation with you or is connected to you ultimately ends up hiring you. You have some people where the answer is no or not now. And so those prospects, you've got to go through and list out your prospects, determine where those prospects came from. And any of those prospects that were referred to you, you want to capture their referral source's name and add them to this list of referral sources. So it's really important you do this for both clients and prospects. But here's the thing. Having done this, for almost a decade, one thing I know is that a lot of people won't have the prospect information as tightened up as their client information. So if you can go back 3 or 4 years with prospects who decided not to become clients and pull their source and add that to the list, you will have a very healthy, holistic list. But for most people, I find that they have the prospect information for about the last year or two, and that's fine too. But remember, somebody is deemed to be your referral source because they referred a potential client to you, not because that potential client became a paying client. A referral source does not make our list because of the outcome. They make our list as being part of our referral sources because of the action they took to refer us, not necessarily the outcome or if that person became a client or not. And remember, if you are listing out your clients and there are repeat clients on your list, that client who came back to work with you again is not their own referral source. You cannot refer yourself. A client cannot refer themselves. That source is actually marked as a repeat client. And I call that out specifically because that's the number one mistake I see when I'm reviewing people's data is I will see the same name in both columns. And I'll be like, is this the same person? They'll be like, yeah, well, they came back to do work with me a year later. And I'll be like, that's a repeat client. That's the source, not a referral source. So by all means, if you have questions about this, if you're thinking about someone in your head, like, oh, what is that scenario? Would this actually be the same thing? Please feel free to hop into the chat and ask that question. I'll make sure that we definitely get all those questions answered. There's not, let's be honest, this is going back through your data. And unless you're a data nerd, there's nothing really sexy about this step. And I completely understand that. And I know for most people, going through this step is not a 3-minute exercise. For some people, it's going to maybe even take an hour or longer just because of how you're keeping your records, just because of how you keep up your data within your business with or without a database. There's no judgment here, right? I've seen people who can do it quickly. I've seen people who take us a long time. But here's the one thing I will tell you. Every single person who's ever gone through this process with me and has said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to list out my clients and prospects, determine their source. And then from that list, I'll know where all my clients are coming from. And I'll be able to identify who my referral sources are by name. It is one of the most empowering moments they take in their business journey, whether they've been in business a year or 22 years. Because at that moment, not only do you realize who are the people who are willing to put their reputation on the line and refer clients to you, you're also going to learn all this other data about your business, about what's working and bringing you clients and what's not. Right? A lot of times I'll have people go through this process and they're like, I'm in 7 different networking groups and they all meet for coffee at like 8 o'clock in the morning, right? And then I'm constantly in all these networking groups or I'm spending all this money in this advertising and I can't actually deduct that any of my clients came from some of those things. It allows you to make really smart decisions as a business owner of where to spend your time and energy as we move into 2023. So whereas I want you to do it because I want you to reveal who your referral sources are, who are they, and how many do you have? I also want you to understand that this data is powerful and to understanding, okay, what does this look like in my business of where my clients are coming from? It's just a powerful step. Again, pulling data, in my opinion, not really sexy, not a whole lot of fun, but what it reveals to me on the back end is super powerful and empowering. I want you guys to keep that in mind as you go through it. Okay, so I just want you guys to do a guesstimate. Tell me in the chat, if you just randomly guessing, maybe you know, awesome, but just tell me, what do you think is your number of existing referral sources that you have right now? So just hop into the chat and tell me. You may be wrong, and that's okay. No one's judging you. No one's going to remember the number that you said. But how many existing referral sources do you think you have? Okay, so we have someone who counted. They have 7, 10, 2, 3, 3, 4, 2, 0. That's why I'm here. I love it. I'll talk about that in just a minute. 20, 4, 10. I love it. These numbers are great. Like, so this is your guesstimate, unless you did what somebody earlier on said, right? Unless you've actually gone through this process and you know for a fact, right? I'm going to assume most of these are guesstimates. Here's what I offer to you. If you do this process and you go through and you identify who your existing referral sources are because they have referred to you in the last year or 2 or 3 or 4, and your number, whatever number you come up with when you do the data, if it's different than the number you just said, I would love for you to email me and tell me what your number truly is. And no matter if it's 1 or 2 or more or even 0, I will celebrate with you, because I think that there needs to be celebration when you go through the data dive. Like, I just think we shouldn't do this in a vacuum. So if you go through the process and you're like, hey, I'm Kathy, and I said I had 15 referral sources, and then I went through the list, and guess what? I have 22, right? Kathy, if that's the case, I want to celebrate with you. And I'm just using Kathy as an example because her name is right there on my chat feature. So she's the one you got picked on. Right? Or Danny, you said you don't think you have any, but if you go through this process and you've got a couple, I want to celebrate with you too. Now, I will address what it looks like if you don't have referral sources. Let me get to that as soon as I get through the existing referral source strategy, because they are very different strategies. So good. Thank you guys for participating in that. No matter what your number is, right? It's all good. And there's only one direction to go, is up and more if you need that. Sometimes you have enough referral sources. You just need more referrals from the ones you have. Sometimes you need referral sources. Sometimes you need both. All right, let's move on to this existing referral source strategy. So we've identified our existing referral sources, right? Let me pause because I did just see that question.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liz. I get a small percentage of my business through subcontracting or professional networks. Do you consider those referrals? And Jerry had the same question. Okay, so here's how I always tell folks to think about this. At the end of the day, it's your business, and you're going to get to make that decision. I'm sorry, the name is cut off, so I don't know who I'm talking to. Let me see if I can find it. Nancy. Okay. So Nancy and Jerry, the reality of it is that you get to make the decision of how you want to look at them. My response to folks is always, whatever you decide, stay consistent with it. So if you have people who refer you and you want to consider those your referral sources, and then you want to consider that you have a subcontractors who subcontract you out, I would keep them separate from your referral sources, because they're subcontracting you out and giving you business, but they need you, right? Because they need the subcontractor and you're the one who can do the work. So I would look at subcontracting as separate from referral sources. Now, regarding professional networks, I probably need a little bit more information as to what that looks like, right? I always separate out anything that isn't a pure referral source, meaning they refer me because they trust me and they're helping somebody else solve a problem and they know I'm the right person to help them. That's the number one type of referral source that I'm talking about, right? So if you have others where there's payment being made because it's subcontracting, or you're in a strategic alliance with another organization, and you guys do work together in that regards, then I would say keep them separate. But Nancy and Jerry, you guys get to decide once you understand kind of what it looks like to take care of your existing referral sources. That may help you decide, am I going to keep them separate or not? But Nancy, if you want to hop back in the chat and just define for me a little bit what you mean by professional networks, I can probably give you a more clear answer specific to exact, because that could mean a couple of different things. And I don't want to give the wrong information based on how I think you're defining it. But while you do that, I will move on.
Well,
okay, so
we could just take Nancy off mute.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Probably faster.
Yeah, I think what I'm talking about, that probably wasn't the way I wanted to describe it in terms of professional networks, but I'm thinking of something like Proco or some other organizations where it's almost like a strategic partnership, but they may take a percentage of, but Yeah. So
Got it.
that's, yeah, I didn't know what term to call
Yes.
that's
So
why I called it that. So
thank you, Nancy. No, that's perfect. So then my recommendation would you is that they are separate. Anytime there is any type of compensation happening, because they're taking a percentage of whatever, right, they're sending you, it's just separate. I label those as strategic alliances or strategic partnerships. The relationship is different because there's compensation happening because they're taking a piece of work they're sending you, right? It's just an entirely different dynamic than somebody referring you because they know you can solve someone's problem, right? It's just totally different things. So I would say you have your referral sources, and then you have your subcontracting relationships, and you have your strategic alliance relationships. Keep them separate, because as we talk about step number 2, which is creating this customized referral plan with the right language to nurture those existing referral source relationships, at the end of the day, you don't need to do this for people who are taking a percentage of the work they send you. They don't need this. So that's usually the dividing line of like, do they need to be taken care of in this way to continue to send you business? If not, because they're making money off of it, then don't include them, right? I find that makes it kind of easy for people to say, yes, they need to be on there, or no, they're not. And speaking of the same thing, I get this a lot when your family and friends, so we didn't have time to go into the different types of referral sources, but if you have family and friends referring you, you don't have to put them as part of this list either. Like my husband's in sales. He sells outsourced HR services for a company. And every once in a while, he'll come across somebody that he can refer to me, right? He's my husband. I'm pretty sure as long as we're married, he's going to refer to me. He is not labeled as one of my existing referral sources. He's not on my list, and I don't have a customized referral plan that he is a part of, right? Because he's family, right? He's my husband. So really, when we're looking at who lands in this existing referral source list, it's really your clients that are referring you and your centers of influence or contacts that are referring you, not necessarily family and friends, unless you want to include them. And then by all means, you can. You get to make that choice. But you're going to create a customized referral plan with the right language. Okay, so let's be really honest. The next question is, what's a referral plan, right? Okay, so because this is only 60 minutes, I'm not going to get into all like the inner workings and details of it, but I do want to give you a really good overview so you can understand what this looks like if you decide to go and do this for your referral sources. Okay. Number 1, I want you to understand you're playing the long game. This isn't like running a Facebook ad and getting 100 people to click on it and converting 2 people and doing it within 30 days. That is not what referrals are about. We are playing the long game. I have a client that I've worked with who averaged about 12 referrals a year before she started going through my programs and implementing these strategies. In her very first year, we took her from on averaging 12 referrals a year. We got her to 40 referrals in 1 year. Then she kept the strategies going and she got 52 her second year, then 62 her third year, 67 her fourth year, and 82 last year. And now she's like, actually 82 is more referrals than I can handle. I'm going to level out at 70 and be happy with that, right? And that doesn't mean she's closing all of them, but she's now been working on her closing ratio. She knows what that's going to provide for her business. But we are playing the long game, right? This is not the how many referrals can I get in the next 45 days? This is at least a year, but really the conversation I want to have with you is, hey, you implemented those strategies 3 years ago and you're continuing to implement them. How's your referral growth now? That is what gets me fired up, because I know had I had this with that HR consulting firm that failed and put me in the business failure club, it would not have failed. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching this to other business owners. Remember, anything you do when it comes to referrals is only to your referral source, a human, right? So your Facebook ad and your website, they're talking to prospects. Right? The prospecting and marketing that you do, it's forward-facing language to the prospect, the person who may buy from you. When you're talking about referrals, we're not talking to the prospect. We're only talking to the referral source who knows the prospect. And so that is going to always be a part of what we do, the language we use, how we nurture that relationship, right? Everything comes down to the who's at the end of this. And the end user of this one is our referral sources. Now, if you think about this from like activities, that's not the best way to describe it, but that's how people think about their prospecting and marketing activities. If you think about your referral plan, it's really planned outreach. We call it touch points in my program, but it's planned outreach that is memorable and meaningful. So it keeps you top of mind while using the right language. Let me break these three down for you. Memorable and meaningful. It is not, actually, let me back up. Planned outreach. We build our plan on a 12-month cycle, but you are only going to do somewhere between 5 and 7 touch points in a year. You're not doing something daily, weekly, or monthly. Actually, the average amount of time I would suspect you will spend on executing your referral plan in a year after it's built is going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 hours in a year. Unless you need referral sources, and then you'll probably spend a little bit more time than that. So planned outreach is 12 months. Memorable and meaningful is not your newsletter, right? And it's not the fact that you happen to show up and see them at a networking event, right? That is not memorable and meaningful. Memorable and meaningful is things that actually impact how they feel, and how we want them to feel is taken care of because they know you are thankful and grateful for the fact that you recognize what they're doing for your business. We want them to feel thanked. We want them to feel gratitude, right? Because we want that happiness trifecta to be triggering on the back end too, every time they refer us, not just when they refer us for helping someone else, but knowing that we appreciate it, that they did it, right? But it's memorable and meaningful. And those outreaches go throughout a year, right? Top of mind means we're not keeping in touch. We're actually staying top of mind, which means what we do and how often we do it and the cadence we do it with matters, right? You can't do 5 touch points in 5 months and then for the other 7 months of the year, or wait, that doesn't add up correctly, whatever it is, right? For whatever months, maybe it does. Yeah, 7. Yeah, I don't do public math. You guys just noticed that, right? Okay, moving on. For the other 7 months of the year, right? At the end of that day, we're like, wait, I'm doing nothing, but I should get all these referrals. There's a cadence, there's a rhythm, and the right language. A lot of people confuse what I talk about with client experience and like the client, like, oh, client appreciation, or I'm appreciating my network, right? And taking people to coffee, and that's what I do. Or I send out cards, and that's what I do. And all that stuff is fine. But with our referral sources, we've got to use the right language, because if I'm impacting how you feel about me by me taking care of you and showing my thankfulness, that then helps me direct how you think about me. And the language piece is my secret sauce of what makes all of this work together. So the planned outreach, memorable and meaningful, keeps you top of mind because we use the right language, which is triggering the thought process of subconsciously how they think about you from a referral perspective down the road, because they know you care. And that is really important, right? And so that the frequency, thank you for that question, is 5 to 7 times in a year. 5 to 7 times in a year. Some people are going to be more 6 to 8, right? But most people fall in that range of 5 to 7. Here's what I don't want you to miss. This is not, I have 20 referral sources, and now I've got to do 5 touch points for this person and 5 touch points for this person and 5 touch points for this person. No, right? We are doing 5 to 7 touch points in a year collectively for our referral sources, whether we have 5 of them or 55 of them. So that means we look at this customized plan based on budget, based on what you're comfortable doing, what's authentic to you, and of course, what your referral sources need. But it's 1 touch point delivered to everybody. Because we know who these people are, we have the commonalities, then we have the ability to say, oh, I know what'll be memorable and meaningful. If you sit down and do this, you will be surprised at the ideas that you do come up with without even having to work with me on this, okay? But remember, this comes from referrals come through relationships, and relationships have to be maintained, guys. You've got to do this. That's what's 5 to 7 times a year. But what you do matters just as much as what you say, which also matters just as much as identifying who you're doing it for. And then the last step after you've identified your referral sources, created your custom referral plan with the right language, is you're going to processitize it, which is our word for systematize. I don't know why I just created the word forever ago, and I love it. So you're going to processitize the execution so it actually gets done. Some things can be delegated and outsourced. Some things can be automated, but some things you're going to have to do yourself because these are humans on the other end. And what that referral plan looks like, there better be variety. You cannot be sending someone a card 5 times a year thinking that somehow is going to unleash a referral explosion for you. That's really important to keep in mind, okay? So again, that is just the existing referral source plan. There's the potential referral source plan, and there's the referable client experience that I didn't really go into, but I will tell you when you're thinking about this potential referral sources for those that ask that question, what I do want you to understand is that you don't use this strategy I just taught to nurture people who've never referred you. Right? There's actually a totally different strategy we use to nurture someone who's never referred you, because we have to go through the know, like, and trust factor, that continuum, and we have to bring that up. And so we actually are going to have to spend some time with them, not face-to-face necessarily, but you're going to have to get them to like you and to know that you care about them more than anything they can do for you. And that is a nurturing process in and of itself. So let me, I did want to give you guys this download link. I'll come off a share and start answering questions too, but let me give you guys a minute. If you want to download this flow chart or roadmap of those 18 strategies, that's not necessarily what we call the strategies. That's just how we explain them. You can get it from staceybrownrandall.com/flowchart. So I'll let you guys quickly jot that down or screenshot this. We can put it in the chat as well, but just obviously add the www, right? staceybrownrandall.com flowchart. Thank you, Liz. Let me come off of the stop share and go back in and answer some of those other questions that have come in too. Because I know we have a few minutes left and I want to respect
Lisa
that.
Taylor, I think.
I'm sorry?
It starts with Lisa Taylor's question, I think.
Okay.
Oh, actually,
Yeah, well,
Sarah says, do you have an example of the language that you use?
Oh, actually, I want to go back up to Evan. Because I'll start there and then work my way down. So Evan mentioned it's important to consider the ratio of referrals to capacity to serve. Evan, you were like, after my own heart. Yes, sir. And it's really important. So here's when I work with somebody, the very first thing we actually do, I don't ask them how many referral sources they have. I'm like, how many clients do you need in a year? Like, what is your capacity for clients? That's actually where we start, right? Like, if you can only work with 12 people, right? I have people come up to me all the time. They're like, you got 112 referrals your first year doing your strategy when you were a productivity coach. I want 100 referrals. And I'm like, great. How many clients can you help in a year? And they're like 12. I'm like, why do you need 100 referrals? You probably need like 20, right? So it is important to recognize how many clients can you work with in a year, right? And then that indicates you're not going to get all of those closed by referral. So you're probably going to want more than that referred to you. And then that's all going to be based on your closing ratio. All of my clients, we have strategies in place on that flow chart. There's actually a strategy in place of how we increase your closing ratio, because there is a different way to talk to people who've been referred to you, prospects who've been referred, versus someone you meet, like say a networking event or comes to an ad. And so we do want to increase your closing ratio, and we want everybody above 50%, but my ultimate goal is over 70% closing of the referrals you receive. But that does vary greatly by industry. And so that's really important to keep in mind as well. Okay, so I did repeat the recommended frequency of outreach. It's 5 to 7 times a year. And I think somebody said per referral contact, yes, but it's one touch point going to all referral sources once, and then again, and then again. This is not 5 times 20 referral sources. So I want to make sure that was clear as well. Okay, so question about the language and a question about memorable and meaningful examples as well. So here's the way I want you to think about this. Obviously, you can imagine these are the 2 top questions I get all the time. People are like, what do I do? And what do I say? Right? Obviously, that makes perfect sense. Here's what I want you to know. Who your referral sources are matters the most as to ultimately what you will do. Because here's an example. I'm going to use a gift as an example, but your referral source plan cannot be a whole bunch of gifts. Variety is the spice of life, folks. But here's an example. When I was a business and productivity coach, my niche was working with business owners who were parents. And I actually worked with a lot of husband and wife teams. That's kind of what my niche for who I coached. I recognize my top referral sources were all, guess what? They mirrored my clients. They don't always, but for me, they did. They were also business owners who were working parents. So as part of my outreach for that year, of the 5, 6, or 7 touch points I did, I recognized Mother's Day and Father's Day because my referral sources were mothers and fathers. And so I recognized Mother's Day. And for Mother's Day, I sent a Wonder Woman water bottle. It's like $10. It was a Wonder Woman water bottle. My logo was never on it. My name was never on it. When you removed the card, you didn't know it was from Stacey, except, do you think any of my referral sources forgot that I was the one who sent them the Wonder Woman water bottle? Nope. They didn't forget it. They didn't forget it years later. And it was like 2 years later, I was still getting tagged by people on social media about it, which is great, but obviously not the point. So that's what I did for my referral sources. What I would recommend you to consider if your referral sources are all traditionally men, I'm going to be super generalized here. If they're traditionally men in their 50s who own XYZ type of company, what you're going to do for them will look widely different than if you have people in their 20s or 30s referring to you and they're mixed genders, right? Who your people are matters to what you do. When I build out an interior designer's plan with them, guess what? It looks different from the franchise consultant's plan because we're just talking about different ways we show up, what our business is, and how we have our reputation and our branding, right? So like everything's different. I will say this, whatever you do, don't you dare ever put your logo or your name or anything on it. Do not ever give promo swag of your company and call it a gift for somebody else. It's not a gift. It's a gift for you. If they wear it and carry it around, it's not a gift for them. But again, when you're thinking about these touch points, you don't do 7 gifts in a year. Actually, that is like stalker land, right? That's a little much. There is variety to what we do. There's actually a science. I talked about behavioral economics. When I help someone build their plan, right, and they're going through the program to build their plan, there's actually a 4-part framework, the things they have to consider of what it's going to look like to build their plan, which is why it said customized on that one screen. They're all different. Okay, there was a question also about language. So when I work with clients, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of scripts that we give, but I ultimately come down with teaching the formula of how you create your own referral seed language and then always making sure it sounds like you. But here's the number 1 referral seed that I would tell you that you should go plant today, tomorrow, the next time you get a referral, if you got a referral last week. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like. And this is what to write in a thank you card. People make mistakes with their thank you cards all the time. First of all, this is not an email. This is not a phone call. This is not a text. This is a handwritten thank you note. I know some of you just said, but my handwriting's terrible. I don't care. You need to write slower in print. A handwritten thank you card is a lost art and you can make it better. So send a handwritten thank you card. Here's what you would say. The script that we use, the seed that we plant is called the thank by name. And is literally when you tell someone thank you for referring you, that you're saying, thank you for referring me to, and then you insert the name of the prospect. Lots of people forget that piece. They just say, thanks so much for the referral, but they don't say who they referred. The very direct way of thanking somebody for who they referred to you is going to impact them longer to remember, that's right, I did do that, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's very simple. Here's how I tell folks to write a thank you card when someone refers you. Thank you, I'm gonna use Liz. Thank you, Liz, for referring Sharon to me. Obviously, I would use Sharon's full name. Thank you, Liz, for referring Sharon to me. It's an honor and a privilege to help the people you know and care about. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. It's 3 lines. Thank goodness we're recording this. It's 3 lines. Thank you for referring me to Sharon, or thank you for referring Sharon to me. It's an honor or a privilege or a blessing to help the people you know and care about. Make the language your own. If I can do anything for you, please let me know. So obviously you change that up when Liz refers me the 2nd time, the 3rd time, and the 10th time, obviously I change the language, but that one seed never goes anywhere. It's always thank you for referring so-and-so, insert name of prospect, to me. And that's just, is there language throughout everything else we do? Absolutely. But that's just one I know you guys can all go use immediately and implement it. Great. And Liz says she'll put the thank you language in the show notes email, which would be awesome. So perfect. Evan said, hopefully the majority of participants here are in the happy category of having had prior referrals. If none, how do you recommend I get a perspective on your value proposition for someone in my category? Okay, here's what I want you to do, Evan. I want you to go to my website and I want you to click on the freebie link in the top. And it's going to actually take you to a section that's broken down from I have referral sources, I don't have referral sources. And there are 3 activities there that you can do that'll help you get started to generating referral sources. When people have referral sources, I tell them their first strategy is my growth by referrals program. Like that's the strategy, growth by referrals. When they don't have referral sources, their first step is our referring machines program. And that teaches you how to turn clients and contacts into referral sources. But on that freebie page, there are 3 activities to get you thinking and identifying who could be your referral sources. That I have found is usually the first step to helping somebody go, wow, I do have people I want to cultivate. Now let me see if I want to learn how from Stacey. Yeah. Do I recommend using company stationery for handwritten notes? Actually, it doesn't matter. I am a big proponent that everything you do in your referral strategy should not have your logo on it, except for the thank you note. Whether you create a card that is your own, or whether it is your company logo card, whether it is a card that just says thank you on it, it doesn't matter for me. I would reach it, but I'm afraid I'll actually fall out of my chair while we're recording this if I try to grab it. But the thank you cards I actually give to my clients to use is in front of a card. It just says, keep calm and referral on. And so that's a way we actually plant the referral seed right there on the card. And then you open it up and it's blank. And then you can write your thank you note in it. I tell my clients, because they get the download version, slap your logo on the back if you want to. Here's what I would recommend. If people cannot read your writing and they can't read your signature, you really do actually need your name or your logo on the back of the card, because that means you could be sending out a card and nobody knows who it's from. And I only say that from experience, because I got a gift card from somebody and to this day have no idea who it was, because nothing about the card said anything like, oh, wait, it didn't use my language. She wasn't a client. I think it was a she. It did look like female handwriting. There was like a heart on the eye. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I overgeneralized. But I didn't know they weren't using my language. So I didn't think it was a client of mine, but I was like, I don't know who this is from, because I could not read the handwriting. So if you print your cards, if you have band handwriting, make sure you sign your name or at least have your logo on the back. But if your logo's on the front, that's fine too. What really matters with the card is that it's handwritten and that it's in the mail and that you're using the referral seed language. Thank you, John, for that question. I know I went over, but I think I did answer all of them, Liz.
You did get through all the questions. The PICA,
Okay.
the PICA community always has a lot of questions. So I should have warned you that we'd probably run a little long. I want to thank you very much for your time, and thanks to Sharon for arranging this and pulling it all together. We will be getting what I call the show notes out within the next day or two, with including every links to Stacey, the link that Stacey provided, that text language that she provided, all those things. And my last parting comment is, for those of you who are guests, and this is your very first PICA event, welcome. When we send out the email, we'll encourage you to join PICA as well. So that's it for today. Thank you, everybody. Again, thanks to Sharon, and many, many thanks to you, Stacey.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Bye for now.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
This was great. Thank you.